talking to Hogan during your interview and then asking him if he agreed with all that stuff. I promise.
Well, you know what? The two of you take it over now. So have a great show, okay?
Connell, thank you. Appreciate it. See you tomorrow. Hello, good evening. Thanks for being with us tonight here on The Hill. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. So are the political winds blowing towards Chicago? President Trump now signaling he wants to expand his crime crackdown to other major cities, telling NewsNation today that he's ready to deploy the National Guard to Chicago if needed.
We go in, we will solve Chicago within 1 week, maybe less, but within 1 week we will have no crime in Chicago, just like we have no crime in D.C.
But is there a timeline? How he answered that question as well. Plus, cooking up a case maybe against California. The president suggesting tonight that a lawsuit could be coming for Gavin Newsom. Jesse Weber with us this evening on if the president has a case against the new California maps. Also tonight, he caught some grief for this, for the weekend viral moment. But is the White House actually adopting a policy that Zoran Mamdani would be very proud of? How the Trump administration is defending a big money move. But first tonight here from The Hill, how about this? Are we about to see the Department of War? The commander-in-chief today suggesting that after roughly 7 decades, that change is coming. The president before the cameras today for what felt like most of the day. 3 separate question and answer sessions before reporters, and the news stream did not stop. Trump hinting at possible talks, for example, with the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, signaling that he wants to bring peace to the Korean peninsula and saying he looks forward to another meeting with the North Korean dictator. Trump also asked about where things stand between Russia and Ukraine, saying a meeting between President Vladimir Putin and President Vladimir Zelensky is up to the two of them, perhaps casting some doubt, saying that the two leaders don't like each other. Trump also, by the way, calling for denuclearization in both Russia and China. And here at home, the president was pressed as well on whether he would deploy the National Guard to address violent crime in Chicago and other major cities across the country. The president telling our own Kelly Meyer, quote, "We're ready to go anywhere." All of this comes as the president is openly pushing for a Nobel Peace Prize, trying to convince a skeptical committee that he deserves that honor. But how about this from the commander-in-chief who believes in peace through strength, re-embracing the idea of the Department of War?
So it used to be called the Department of War, and it had a stronger sound. If you people want to, standing behind me, if you take a little vote, if you want to change it back to what it was when we used to win wars all the time, that's okay with me.
NewsNation senior national security contributor General Richard Newton and former Trump White House principal deputy press secretary Hogan Gidley with me here in moments. But we begin tonight with, I don't know who was working any harder in this town today than our own Kelly Meyer, in and out and in and out and in and out of the Oval Office throughout the day on 3 different occasions. Kelly?
Yeah, I should have worn my sneakers today, Blake. It's been a busy Monday, to say the least, from signing executive orders to meeting with the South Korean president to then hosting Gold Star families who lost their loved ones in that chaotic Afghanistan withdrawal 4 years ago today. We were in the Oval through it all for NewsNation, and each time the president brought up renaming the Department of Defense to the Department of War. So when I asked him how he plans to do it, if it requires an act of Congress, he told me, we're just going to do it.
If we need that, I'm sure Congress will go along. You know, that was the name when we won World War I, we won World War II, we won everything, and just to me seems like just a much more appropriate. The other is defense is too defensive, and we want to be defensive, but we want to be offensive too if we have to be.
And I looked at the Secretary of Defense, who was also in there for that moment. He left the commander-in-chief answer that one, but the president did say that change of the name could happen within a week, Blake.
So, Kelly, I joked that you were in and out of the Oval, but you were. Throughout the day, the president was basically on the screen throughout the day, as you laid out there, 3 separate occasions, 3 different reasons. But for our audience tonight here on NewsNation, or those listening to us on Sirius XM, from your view, what was that like being in there throughout the day with him today?
Yeah, it's a really cool look behind the scenes, and always an honor to have the chance to go in there and press the President of the United States on questions that we hope, answer our own viewers and listeners' questions as well. But it was an interesting day to have the opportunity in the morning when he signed executive orders for over an hour to be in there with him. I definitely wish I hydrated more because you were in there for a little over an hour. And then you got back in there for the bilateral meeting with the South Korean president. You were able to ask questions in there. And then for that surprise moment later on as he hosted those Gold Star families, that was completely unexpected. I was getting ready for another live shot, as we do, and they called us up to gather for that and go into the Oval Office. So we do appreciate the access, but to your point, Blake, we haven't really seen a day like this since really the beginning days of his administration. So certainly controlling the airwaves today, Blake.
Felt like that indeed. Our Kelly Meyer live on the North Lawn. Kelly, thank you. With me now, NewsNation senior national security contributor, General Richard Newton, with us once again here on the Hill. General, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. There was a lot there today. I set up some of it, which was Russia and China try to get them to drop their nukes, doubt on a Zelensky-Putin meeting, the Kim Jong-un meeting, the Department of War, just some of my notes from today. What'd you hear?
Same thing, just another typical Monday, in Washington, D.C. in the Oval Office, Blake. Really, this is a very busy time obviously for the administration, for our president, but also for national security. First off, I think we really witnessed, what was a very effective bilateral summit between President Lee of South Korea and President Trump in terms of talking both from an economic standpoint as well as military, trying to continue to close ranks with South Korea, a key ally both in economics and certainly in military for decades. The other aspect of this, what I found was, perhaps the president contemplating renaming the Department of Defense to the Department of War.
Would that get support from your old friends and colleagues, and as you know it and understand it, would that get support?
I don't think so, frankly. From my standpoint, I've always thought of myself as a warfighter, not necessarily a defender. And I'll say personally that the Newton family's been serving in the military for 9 straight decades. The only time that was any member of the Newton family was in the Department of War was my dad's plebe year at West Point in 1946.
Wow.
But really, I think rather than looking at nomenclature or naming, really, what's the mission of the Department of Defense? First, it's to provide military forces to deter war, and then it's just ensure the security, of the nation. And so, again, I don't really would advise the president to take this on. We've got other things to worry about, modernizing the force. I've never seen a more chaotic global security environment in the world since at this very moment. And this other piece of just, trying to really bring back gusto into the terminology of Department of Defense versus Department of War. I don't think it really matters to our 2.1 million men and women in uniform, frankly.
Let me leave you with this, sir. Tee it up if we can. The president today on a possible Putin-Zelensky meeting.
Why do you think President Putin is so reluctant to meet with President Zelensky?
Because he doesn't like him. He doesn't like him.
I think that's pretty straightforward, and I think most people know that and understand that, but I guess it begs the question of if that meeting's ever going to take place.
The only thing that's going to really drive Putin to meeting with President Zelensky or really getting into serious negotiations are going to be enforcement of serious sanctions and those tariffs against those oil partners that Russia has. Secondly, is to provide an increased offensive weapons capability and, frankly, allow for Ukraine to strike offensively where appropriate against key targets such as resupplying their front lines as well as their oil infrastructures and other capabilities. That's the only thing that's going to drive Putin to meeting with Zelensky. Okay.
Lieutenant General Richard Newton, NewsNation national security contributor. 9 decades. I learned something new about the family today. Thank you, sir. We'll catch you again soon.
Thank you, Blake.
Of course. All right. With me now, Hogan Gidley, former principal deputy press secretary in the first Trump administration. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Thanks for being in on this Monday when the president was talking about the Department of War there, and Kelly asked him, how are you going to do it? He said, we're just going to do it. You laughed out loud. You chuckled a little bit. Why?
I did. Well, because that's what he wants to do. He also made the point about Congress, though, as well, and said if we need Congress, I'm sure they'll go along, too. So these are things he obviously kicks around for quite some time before he pulls the trigger on something like that, and I think he's doing it for all the world to see.
You think that was just a trial balloon there a little bit?
I think a little trial balloon. I think he's probably made his decision. You heard him say he likes the nomenclature. It's crisp. He likes the way it sounds. So who knows?
Kelly said it. I felt it. You've been a part of it, so have I. These days where all of a sudden you're just like in the Oval nonstop, it feels like. Today was one of them. It's a summer Monday, although I guess the end of summer. D.C. is going to sort of return next week. What do you think the president was setting up there, if anything?
I don't know that he was setting anything up. I think the stark contrast, obviously, between Donald Trump's administration, the rapidity at which he moves versus Joe Biden and the slow slog that it was, and a lot of access for reporters. You heard Kelly say that. She loves the access. She loves being able to go in there. But, of course, you can't focus on one story or one issue because he's always throwing so many different things at you in a day.
What do you think he was trying to do, though, today? Because it's not just random that all of a sudden you got reporters in the Oval for basically like an hour and a half.
No, I think he likes to get on those rolls every once in a while. He likes to talk to the American people. He's got a lot on his plate, a lot of things happening with Russia and Ukraine, obviously with South Korea there as well, talking about the Department of Defense, which could be the Department of War. He's already changed and refocused the mission of that department, too. Recruitment is way up, meeting all these numbers they haven't met in a long time. So it makes sense now. He says, I want to change the name.
The other big story, of course, the possible National Guard going into Chicago. They're here on the ground in D.C. We're interviewing the Attorney General from the state of Illinois in about 20 minutes or so. You know the president well. What's your sense? Is he going to try to do that?
I'm not sure if he's going to try and do it. I know he wants to clean up our major cities. That is obvious. But once again, what he has done is put the Democrats in a position where they're defending criminals as opposed to those who are stopping crime. It is baffling to me that Democrats, from a pragmatic or even a political standpoint, wouldn't say, all right, let's get on the right side here and try to clean up some of these streets. They're fighting the president on this. And for reporters to send out pictures this weekend on their social media feeds lamenting the fact there were National Guard people walking through the streets of D.C. They didn't say a word about the crime, the rapes, and the murders. They don't say a word about the homeless people and what they do to our city at all. They're worried about the folks cleaning up our streets and protecting American families. It makes no sense at all.
I mentioned 20 minutes from now, the Attorney General there in the state of Illinois will be with us, Hogan Gidley. Thank you, sir. Catch you later in the show.
Of course.
Appreciate it. All right, still to come tonight. Here on the Hill, Chicago. Is that what's next?
As you all know, Chicago's a killing field right now, and they don't acknowledge it.
President Trump hinting at sending in troops to the Windy City, but the governor today saying nope.
His proposed actions will make our jobs harder and the lives of our residents worse.
So what is ahead for one of America's largest cities? I'm Blake Berman. Thank you for being with us tonight. We're back here in 4 minutes, other side of the break here on the Hill.
Lawsuit pretty soon, and I think we're going to be very successful in it. We're going to be filing it through the Department of Justice. That's going to happen.
President today, you heard him there, floating the concept of a lawsuit against Gavin Newsom. It comes as that state's leaders out there in California try to give Democrats a possible 5-seat edge in the House of Representatives by redrawing their congressional maps before the next election. It would counter what Republicans have done in Texas, who just passed new maps of their own, giving Republicans a 5-seat advantage in Congress. Newsom telling Trump in a social media post, bring it. Meantime, in Minneapolis, the Democratic Party laying the groundwork for the next election cycle at its summer meetings. But this is what attendees heard today from their former vice presidential candidate.
Think of how easy it would be to be a damn Republican. Oh, what should I wear today? This stupid friggin' red hat. What should I say today? I don't know. Just make sure it's cruel. Who do we listen to? That guy. Oh, the felon in the White House.
Race to the bottom, possibly, no matter where you look. Political reaction here from Mark Short, former chief of staff to the vice president Mike Pence, and Dan Cannonen, former Battleground States director for the Biden and Harris campaigns. But first, to the legal details, the man there, right side of the screen, Jesse Weber, NewsNation legal contributor. Jesse, hello. The president floated this idea of a lawsuit against Gavin Newsom and the state of California if they redraw the maps. Texas did it. California might do it. Who's got the upper hand out there if the president sues?
At this point, it feels like California has the upper hand. And I say that without even knowing what the legal arguments would be mounted by the Department of Justice. The reason I say that is, look, they may adopt a lot of the arguments that California Republicans have been moving forward with, right? That this is unconstitutional, that this is up to an independent commission in California to redraw the lines, that the way that this bill was pushed through was illegal. It was pushed through fast. You need a 30-day wait period, that it was tied to other legislation. But those are all state issues. I don't know if the Department of Justice will actually have the authority to bring those state arguments. But federal argument, this is a violation of, let's say, the Voting Rights Act. Problem with that is you have to show that it has some sort of discriminatory effect or intent, and I don't know if that's really what we're seeing in California. So we're kind of waiting and seeing. And by the way, the California Supreme Court has actually refused to intervene. There were state Republicans in California who were trying to stop this. The California Supreme Court said no, they're not going to get involved at this point. So it seems more of an uphill battle from a federal point of view to try to stop what's happening in California, but I'll wait and see what the arguments are.
Wait and see, but it sounds like you're saying there's nothing that the Trump administration really can do about this other than just file a lawsuit like California's been filing against them.
Yeah, make an argument, see if it works. They can definitely try, but based on what I'm seeing so far, I don't really know what that argument would be per se. But hey, listen, the president says that he'll have strong chances of winning. Maybe he knows better than I don't.
All right. Jesse Weber, NewsNation legal contributor. Catch you throughout the week. Thanks, bud.
You got it. Of course.
All right, back with me now, Mark Short, Dan Cannon, and hello, gentlemen. I want to get to the sort of the political side of this because I've said this. If you're for it in California, you got to be for it in Texas. If you're for it in Texas, you got to be for it in California. It's all race to the bottom stuff. And then, Dan, I see the guy that you used to work for, Tim Walz, coming out there and basically saying Republicans are cruel. And it just feels, again, like race to the bottom no matter where you look.
Well, politics can feel that way in this country right now. Mark and I were promoting that a little bit back in the green room. But look, I don't think there's a similar situation in California and Texas in terms of the race to the bottom, because California is acting specifically because of what Texas has put on the table first. In fact, every part of that bill was based on a trigger that we will not go forward if Texas does not go forward, right? We're only doing this temporarily to basically negate what they are doing. And Jesse made a point in litigation. I want to make this really quick. Texas is under active litigation for 3 years that they have been violating the Voting Rights Act, and now they go further away from that with this bill. California specifically got away from that stuff. They're not trying to do the same thing.
Does Tim Walz need to cut that out?
I do think that Democrats are wise to not just act totally emotionally in this moment with Trump. It's very easy to see this how it's happening, watch it in the Oval Office, react to all of this in that kind of way. He's a real guy, and Tim Walz does speak directly in that sort of plain language sometimes, which can be good, but also get you in trouble.
Right.
I think people want a turn-the-page moment in our politics, which that is exactly.
I just hear Hillary Clinton calling them deplorables. I mean, it's the same comment from Democrats, once again, denigrating Republican voters, denigrating Republican members of Congress. And I think that's what's helped switch a lot of the blue-collar workers into the Republican Party, is that the Democrat Party continues to adopt elitist rhetoric.
Yeah, I think at some point you have to look and say, how do you talk to people with plain language, with respect? You know, there are other guys in the race, Blake, besides Tim Walz. I think Andy Bashir is one I've talked about before. Here's a guy who in Kentucky has half the Republicans in Kentucky who think of him favorably, and he doesn't do any of that stuff and talks to people with really clear language that mimics how they talk in their real life.
You actually thought today was an important day for Democrats, kind of like a kickoff to 2028. They're there in Minnesota, Minneapolis to go through a whole bunch of really weedy things that we're not going to talk about. But I was looking at Kalshi. You know I love this stuff, the betting markets. Here's where it is. Newsom, 29% chance. AOC, Congresswoman, 13% chance. No one else hitting double digits, Dan.
Yeah, well, look, I think it's a long way to go, and you're going to see a bunch of candidates get in. And the person that can really make this a turn-the-page election and demonstrate to voters, Democratic voters, that they can win, they can be on offense, they can have message that resonates with working-class Americans, and do so with progressive values, that can really ring the bell for folks. And there's a lot of time to get that done.
I think at this point in the campaign, you're going to have people, front runners. Scott Walker was front runner in 2016. There are people in 2020. So it's going to change a lot. But to go back to your conversation on redistricting, I do think one difference in Texas and California is it is in the Texas Constitution to allow them to redistrict. California has to change their Constitution to do this. But I think one of the conversations Dan and I were having before is that what you're also doing is you're replacing incumbent Democrats in Texas with new Republicans, and you're replacing incumbent Republicans with new Democrats. So you're having newer members come on and then be more and more hardened and partisan because they know they're getting here specifically because of gerrymandering.
Because they're going through they're winning the primary and then nothing after that.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. See you guys later in the show. Mark, Dan, appreciate it. Still to come tonight. Other side of the break, the president teases the city of Chicago as maybe the next stop for the National Guard.
We go in, we will solve Chicago within 1 week, maybe less, but within 1 week we will have no crime in Chicago, just like we have no crime in D.C.
You might imagine that caught the attention of Chicago's mayor, the governor there, and the state of Illinois, and they spoke out today. Other side of the break, the attorney general from Illinois with us live here on the Hill. Former number 2 over at the Department of Homeland Security in the Trump administration to counter. Both reactions, both voices when we return. All right, welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. Live look. City of Chicago there. Beautiful summer evening. As President Trump says, that could actually be the next city in line for a federal crime crackdown. He doubled down today, saying the Illinois governor, J.B. Pritzker, should ask for his help.
Chicago is a disaster, and the governor of Illinois should say, President, would you do us the honor of cleaning up our city? We need help. They need help. They need help. So we may wait. We may or may not. We may just go in and do it, which is probably what we should do.
The Democratic governor there responding at a press conference just a couple hours later. He didn't ask for help, as you might imagine, instead saying this.
His proposed actions will make our jobs harder and the lives of our residents worse. Earlier today in the Oval Office, Donald Trump looked at the assembled cameras and asked for me personally to say, Mr. President, can you do us the honor of protecting our city? Instead, I say, Mr. President, do not come to Chicago.
The governor says any potential federal takeover in the Windy City will end up in court. And the man who would be responsible for all that is the Attorney General in the great state of Illinois, Kwame Raoul, with us live here on the Hill. Sir, thanks for being with us tonight. Your state, your governor, yourself in the middle of the news today. We appreciate the time. So you heard the governor there basically say if the president tries to move forward with the National Guard troops in the biggest city in your state, it ends up in court. What would you do?
Well, it all depends on what is the National Guard being sent in to do? Are they being sent in to protect federal buildings, or are they being sent in to do what is usually the responsibility for local police to do? And so the Posse Comitatus Act sort of sets up the framework for federalizing the National Guard. And we don't have a foreign invasion. We don't have an insurrection. And not quite clear what federal law that is inadequately being enforced. So I don't think the prerequisites are there for sending in the National Guard to Chicago. So we would take action.
On the first thing that you said, sir, it sounds like there's a very slim chance you would accept some of it, or did I mishear you?
No, listen, I mean, if there's a reason why to indicate that there's a threat to a federal building or something like that, that might be adequate. But listen, it's important to recognize that since the onset of my serving as Attorney General, I've collaborated with federal law enforcement on crime. Federal law enforcement agencies that are trained to deal with fighting crime, the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, Secret Service, even HSI. In certain circumstances, we fought crimes such as gun trafficking and other gun crimes, internet crimes against children, organized retail crime, and other crimes. And so we welcome collaboration with federal law enforcement that are trained to fight crime.
The mayor there in Chicago, Brandon Johnson, said something that caught my attention, sir. I want to play it. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
According to FBI data, Chicago is not in the top 25 of the most dangerous cities in the United States. And these facts are indisputable and widely acknowledged.
I've seen it at 16th on a list. Either way, you know this, sir. The numbers are not great. For example, the murder rate is 3 times the murder rate of New York City, with 1/5 of the population. For the first time since 2019, murders fell below 600. Chicago accounts for 3.7% of all murders in the United States of America, despite having 0.8% of the population. He was kind of bragging there about maybe not necessarily being in the 99th percentile, but being in the 98th percentile, or whatever the numbers are. But I think the point is, doesn't Chicago need help of some kind?
What's indisputable is crime is going down in Chicago. And what is also indisputable is that there are red states with crime rates that are higher than Chicago. And do we need help? Absolutely. We need help in the order of what I spoke about before, a collaboration with federal law enforcement that are trained to fight crime. And if the president and the attorney general want to get FBI agents from looking at Epstein files and send them into Chicago to collaborate with our local law enforcement, we'd welcome it. If they want to stop ATF or DEA agents from working on immigration enforcement and have them work on gun trafficking and drug trafficking along with local law enforcement, I welcome it. So I do welcome the help of the federal government. I sued the Department of Justice just last week because they placed conditions on funding for victims of crime. Why would they be doing that if they cared about crime in Chicago or in any other jurisdiction in the United States? Why would they be cutting funds from community violence interruption? Why would they be defunding the police?
Okay. We wanted to hear from both sides. He's the Attorney General there in Illinois, Kwame Raoul, with us tonight here on The Hill. Thank you for presenting your side on a big day there in your town. Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.
Yep, of course. Other side now. Ken Cuccinelli, former Attorney General, Republican from the Commonwealth of Virginia, former Deputy Homeland Security Secretary as well. How about that? Hello, Ken. Always nice to see you. You just heard from the AG there who said, you know what, collaborate with us.
Yeah, no, I appreciate what Attorney General Raoul had to say in some respects. He's a lot more reasonable sounding than your clip of Governor Pritzker, that's for sure. And as a former Attorney General, I'm just glad to hear that from an Attorney General. But as you noted, the crime numbers in Chicago are terrible. And we can dispute the exact totals, but Chicago accounts for a material percentage of all homicides in America. And let's not forget, because oftentimes when people discuss this, now we haven't tonight, so I'm bringing it up, I keep hearing, well, why does he keep going to these cities or talking about these cities with black mayors? Let's forget who the mayors are. Let's even forget who the criminals are for a moment. Let's think about who are the crime victims. And in Chicago, 75% of the homicide victims are black, while they make up a third of the population of the city. We could see similar numbers in D.C., and they're suffering more. So when people throw the race element on the mayor piece, remember the crime victims. And I worked with this president on his criminal justice reform in his first term. He cares about the crime victims. And that's a big motivator for him. And Chicago's got an awful lot of them that aren't being taken care of.
You say you worked with him, and you did. I wonder what your sense is if he tries to, if he does indeed try to send the National Guard into Chicago. What's your gut tell you?
So if he did that, I think it would be to assist federal law enforcement there, really to beef it up in enforcing federal law. They couldn't be enforcing state law, say, under the Insurrection Act. Right. There are three other things other than insurrection that he can utilize the National Guard to enforce the law in Chicago, but only federal law, as the president who signed the Posse Comitatus Act did in Arizona for a year and a half, with no complaints from anyone in Congress, I might add. So I will say the Attorney General got that one wrong. The National Guard activation is not related to Posse Comitatus. And Posse Comitatus does not stand in the way of the president utilizing the National Guard to bolster federal assets if he doesn't think they have enough to do the job. But the president today also, let me leave it with this, because the president today was asked by our own Kelly Meyer, when are you going to send in the National Guard? He didn't answer. So I guess it leaves open the question of whether or not he thinks he can. Oh, I don't think there's any doubt that he can. I think the question is, what can they do and what can they do effectively? I think those are the two questions. And as I think you and I have talked about before, it's not like Washington, D.C., because Washington, D.C. is a federal district. The president has much more sweeping, localized authority in Washington, D.C. that he doesn't have in any of the states, including in Chicago, Illinois.
Ken Cuccinelli, appreciate the time, sir. Kwame Raoul as well, the Attorney General. How about that?
Good to be with you.
Nice to be with you as well. A reasonable discussion on both sides to a very divisive and heated issue. All right, still to come tonight here on the Hill. Phew, there was so much news today. The president in the Oval, just nonstop. And then the president as well and his administration are now starting to do something a bit unusual that even has Republicans saying, what's this about?
I just made $10 billion or $11 billion for the United States of America. And yeah, there will be other cases. If I have that opportunity again, I would do that.
The president with an announcement on Intel, but is he doing the exact same thing as Zohran Mamdani? Full panel, other side.
NewsNation exclusive, a secret government experiment exposed.
My government used me like I was a guinea pig.
An alleged cover-up spanning generations.
Is there a sense of betrayal here?
Definitely.
NewsNation investigates Wednesday, 7/6 Central.
American companies. The Trump administration is starting to get some pushback now. Here was the president's top economic advisor, Kevin Hassett, who said this today regarding the company Intel agreeing to give the U.S. government a 10% stake in the company. Watch.
The president has made it clear all the way back to the campaign that he thinks that in the end it would be great if the U.S. could start to build up a sovereign wealth fund. And so I'm sure that at some point there'll be more transactions, if not in this industry, in other industries.
So it doesn't sound like it ends with Intel, the U.S. government looking into ownership in other companies as well, various industries. And the president wasn't exactly downplaying the government's involvement, posting this to Truth Social in part, quote, I paid $0 for Intel. It's worth approximately $11 billion. All goes to the U.S. Why are stupid people unhappy with that? Some might argue that the type of people who are fans of this type of government takeover are those like Bernie Sanders and Zohran Mamdani. In fact, Sanders agrees with this. So what about it? Full panel here with me now. Mark Short, former Chief of Staff to Vice President Mike Pence. Back again, Hogan Gidley, former Principal Deputy Press Secretary in the Trump administration. First go around. Yemisi Egbawali is a Democratic strategist. And Dan Cannonen, former Battleground States Director for the Biden and Harris campaigns. Hello to you all. Thanks for being in on this Monday. He didn't say you were stupid, but he kind of called you out there, Short.
I have never seen a Republican administration with more central planners anxious to seize the means of production faster than Mamdani is. As you said, the only senator who's been outspoken in support of this is Bernie Sanders. The other nations with sovereign wealth funds are Iran, China, Saudi Arabia. Is that the model of free markets for the United States of America? And really the Tea Party that began in 2009 was in response to elected officials in Washington taking the dollars of Main Street and sending it to Wall Street. And now you're basically saying we're going to take taxpayer dollars from blue-collar Americans and subsidize American companies. This is not what free market Republicans stand for in any way.
So what's the defense? Because if you were at the podium or you were at the North Lawn and I was standing there, I'd say you're turning conservative Republican principles on their head.
Okay. I'm not at the podium. I'm on this panel, so let's all relax.
No, I know.
I'm not speaking on behalf of the White House. Interestingly enough, I'm starting to see a common theme, though, with this president and with this administration, whether it's men and women's sports or, making sure the border's closed so illegal aliens don't take away American resources, drain our resources. He wants fairness out there. Tariffs the same way. Free trade, fair trade. The free trade's always there. The fair trade never follows. He takes a look at this, and you've heard him say this now many times publicly, so is Lutnick and the Commerce Secretary and others, that we're giving all of this money to these companies. What are we getting in return for it? We're just giving it away. So I think in his mind, he's going, wait a minute, how do we start to make money back for this country in some form or fashion?
Should you take fairness of free markets?
I'm sorry?
You don't believe in the fairness of free markets?
That's not what I said. What I'm saying I'm saying that's the way I think he's looking at it, and this administration is looking at it, trying to make it somewhat
fair. They don't believe in the fairness of free markets?
I'm saying what they like is the fairness of We're giving money away. What are we getting in return for it? And I think if they don't see a return on that investment, they're going to look for ways to get that.
So, companies that got funding from the CHIPS Act include Intel, TSMC, Micron, Texas Instruments. Now I'm wondering if you ever get to a president, whoever on the Democratic side, what companies do you want to own?
Oh, I don't want to own companies.
Okay, so are you with Short?
I'll yield my time back to Mark Short, who's doing a great job.
Okay.
No, but I want to put Blake on the conservative Republicans who have issues with this. Where are they? The Sovereign Wealth Fund, you've got this takeover of these companies, or owning a stake in the companies. You've got federalizing law enforcement into states. You've got the tariff regime. You get privatized enterprises, whether it's academic institutions or anyone else, being pressured by a federal government to speak a certain way. Where is the conservative principles left in this country? They don't exist with Donald.
Do you guys see a difference between Zohran Mamdani, who could be the next mayor of New York, saying, I want city-owned grocery stores, and this Republican administration basically saying, we want stakes in Fortune 500 companies?
Well, Trump is claiming that he's going to be passive with this, and I just don't think Trump exists as a passive person to begin with. And this is separate from the grocery stores because Intel still has competition like TSMC and AMD. And of course, there was a program put in the
CHIPS Act?
The CHIPS Act, which was at Commerce, and that was completely destroyed and taken away. And so as somebody who worked in the Biden administration on the CHIPS Act, I just have a hard time seeing how this follows any of the guidelines.
Can I say one other thing, Blake, on this? On the national security front, just 2 weeks ago, the president tweeted more or less that the CEO of Intel insinuates a Chinese spy and should be fired. 2 weeks later, everything's fine if we own 10%.
Well, he was negotiating a deal, it sounds like, right?
Well, is that right? I mean, is it a national security threat or not? Because it seems like, it's no longer a national security threat as long as we own 10%.
Okay. Other side, I mentioned Mamdani, right? Mm-hmm. So do you think this is kind of like what he's proposing, or no? Totally different.
I don't think it's the same thing entirely.
He was in the news today, news over the weekend. He had this viral moment of which he couldn't bench press his own weight. What is he?
I can't bench from my own weight, so that's I'm not going to look. But on the question of grocery stores, can I get back to the he's doing that as a service to city residents, right? He views it as a need that happens that they have to have access to food at lower costs, and that's meeting a moment, whether it's a good idea or not. That's different than what Donald Trump is doing, which is trying to get a stake in something so he has political leverage over a company. Very, very different.
Different.
I want to go back to the bench press thing. That's the thing I'm most embarrassed by. Yeah, I couldn't believe that at all. Look, I think these are broader conversations we are having now because Donald Trump is bringing these issues to the fore that were never talked about on our side. We didn't do these types of things. Hold on. Now we're back to the bench press.
Okay, now play Pete Hegseth doing a pull-up.
Yeah, he can do that.
That's pretty good, honestly.
It's horrible. That guy was spotting. I didn't want to talk about it.
I'll give you the last one.
I don't see there's much difference. Basically, Mamdani's trying to nationalize grocery stores, or not nationalize, but trying to take over grocery stores in New York City. It's the same deal. It's not trusting the free market.
Okay. All right. We'll leave it there. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Still to come here on the other side of the break. My take. There was a soundbite involving that man right there. And I'm going to explain to you why I want you to hear it on this Monday and what we all can take away from it. And coming up on Elizabeth Vargas Reports, SpaceX, how about this? About to go with that mega rocket launch. All eyes on this as they've obviously had some trouble there with SpaceX. But you know what? Failure can also be a good thing when it comes to stuff like this. Elizabeth Vargas Reports, 8 minutes away. Other side of the break, my take and what's trending. Home, trying to catch up on some of the big stories of the day. Here's what's trending right now on thehill.com. The president signs orders targeting cashless bail and flag burning. This part of it, the flag burning part, is actually getting a little bit of pushback from some conservatives, believe it or not, with that executive order that the president signed. It was a fascinating day for him. He was in the Oval Office 3 different times before reporters taking questions throughout the day. This is the story, just the on again, back and forth, continues here to the end of the summer. Trump administration, quote unquote, absolutely forbidden from removing Abreu Garcia, a judge says. And then how about this? They might wish they'd have a mulligan on this one. Cracker Barrel releases statement following backlash over rebranded logo. PR department is having to deal with this one. For those stories and more, all you have to do is scan the QR code on your screen, or you can head on over to thehill.com. calm. All right, time for my take now. President Trump posting throughout the weekend about sports debates that were both old and new. After playing golf with the Rocket, the president posted that he believes that the Yankees and Red Sox great Roger Clemens should be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Clemens isn't in Cooperstown, of course, because of allegations of performance-enhancing drugs, something that he's denied. Trump also saying that the Ryder Cup captain, Keegan Bradley, should select himself as a player for golf's USA versus Europe match next month. The president saying as well that he will attend the Ryder Cup in New York. But a headline of a different kind caught my attention. Tommy Fleetwood, who had the longest streak in golf for not winning here in the United States, finally broke out over the weekend, winning the Tour Championship and its $10 million prize. Now, he was celebrated from across the sports world for his resilience. LeBron James, Caitlin Clark, for example, even chiming in. And when asked why he is so well-liked among his peers, this was Fleetwood's response.
You say, why do people like me so much? I've always been very lucky that I make a great connection with people. If I could give my kids one piece of advice, I mean, there's tons of advice, but I always tell them to be a good person first.
If he could give his kids one piece of advice, it's to be a good person first. Now, Fleetwood's words can be teed up for all to consider: politics, sports, everything in between. I thank you so much for watching us tonight here on the Hill. We returned on a Monday, and the president was all over the place with news. One of the big stories, of course, not only in that building behind me, but out in the Windy City in Chicago. Will the president send the National Guard there? Keep our eyes on it. I thank you so much for watching. I'm Blake Berman.